Hello, everyone. I am Quinn Wisson from Vertical Measures. Thank you for being here today at our monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Content to Close: How Great Content Can Dramatically Increase Closing Rates While Decreasing Sales Cycles. Our special guest presenter today is Marcus Sheridan. If you don't already know him, he's also known as the Sales Lion, and honestly, one of my favorite presenters, so I'm super excited to hear his talk today. He's a sought-after speaker and leader in the digital sales and marketing space, and he works with hundreds of businesses and brands to help them become the best teachers and communicators in their space. I do have just a couple of quick notes to mention before I hand over the presentation. We are recording the webinar today, and you will be able to view it tomorrow. I will send out an email in the morning tomorrow with a link to both the slides and the recording so you can review it and also share it with your team. We'll also be happy to answer any of your questions. So if you take a peek at your webinar interface, you'll see a little section that's called questions, and that's where you can send me anything you'd like me to ask Marcus, or you can tweet along with us. Use the hashtag VMWebinar, and I'll follow along there and get your questions as well. If you have any technical problems, feel free to let me know. I'm on the back end looking at things, or you can sign off and sign back on, and usually that fixes the issue. So I think those are all my notes, and I'm going to hand it off to our presenter, Marcus Sheridan.
Quinn, thank you for that. I'm excited to be here, everybody. And of course, we know you're going to have questions. We're going to have some time at the end to answer them. And let's have some fun, shall we? I'm going to speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we will take the Q&A. I'm going to go pretty fast because there's lots of cool things that I want to talk about. And hopefully, if you feel like you missed something, you know, there's my email on the screen. You're welcome to email me after the fact as well. So today's game plan, let's talk about it, shall we? I'm going to give you my brief story. Then we're going to talk about when I discovered the power of content to sell, which is awesome. And frankly, I don't think a lot of companies have really discovered this yet. Don't have a true testimony of, wow, content can sell if we use it the right way. I'm going to talk about the most critical sales and buying trend today that unfortunately most sales teams are not aware of. And we're going to talk about the big mistake that we keep seeing companies making, big and small, when it comes to their content strategy and how this, of course, relates to sales. Then we're going to discuss the subjects that every content strategy must include. In other words, what are you talking about in your content? And there's a big difference between just talking about stuff and actually moving the needle, so we're going to address that. And then we're going to hit on video, because how can you talk about content in sales today without talking about video? The who, the what, and the how of video to sell. So there you have it, my quick story. So for those that don't know the story, I started a swimming pool company called River Pools and Spas in 2001, and things were going okay until the market collapsed in 2008 and 2009. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but the main thing I want you to take away from this right now is that we were able to overcome this collapse and this near bankruptcy that we had. It was terrible financial straits. And today we have the most trafficked swimming pool builder website in the world, and we get about 500,000 visitors a month right now. And so much of what I'm going to talk about is about this, but it's also about some the trends that we keep seeing over and over again with our clients. And part of Vertical Measures having me here today is everything I'm going to talk about is found in my new book that's out, They Ask, You Answer. And the thing about this book that I think is symbolic of a lot of organizations, and it's really important, is lots of times we've got marketing here, we've got sales here, they're not aligned. If you look at a lot of the content marketing books out there, they just talk about content, they don't talk about sales teams specifically. And so to me, content marketing is a sales tool that we all have to use. Marketing automation is a sales tool that happens to measure marketing. And so at this point, we've got to be very focused on always including the two together when we have these types of conversations. And I've got to tell you, too, that as I talk today, that I want you to know every principle that I address is as B2B as it is B2C. It's so easy to hear this stuff and say, oh, Marcus, I might work for you as a pool guy. No, 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 no. In fact, the book itself has a ton of B2B case studies, and I'm going to show one great B2B case study at the end of this just so I can show you that vision. And so let's just get to it. Love talking about this subject right here. How many pages of your website do you think a potential customer or client would be willing to read? Now, if you're in marketing, you may have an answer. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's say you ask that question to the leadership team in your organization. Let's say you ask it to your sales manager or your sales team. What would their answer be? I can almost guarantee you what their answer would be because I've done this live polling like in audiences all over the globe. And the average answer is 2 to 3 pages, which is almost like saying, yeah, people are willing to spend about 5 minutes of their time to see if they want to do business with us, which is crazy, right? Because that thing that you sell is worth dramatically more than 5 minutes of somebody's time. But unfortunately, we've all bought in, especially sales teams, have bought into this idea that everybody's too busy and they don't have the time to consume the content. Because the fact of the matter is this: when somebody's getting ready to spend money, they will take the time so as to ensure they don't make a mistake. And to give you the vision of how this works for me, when I discovered this in 2013, it changed my life, the power of this number 30. At the beginning of 2013, I was looking at some of the analytics from my swimming pool company, and I was comparing two groups of people from my website. Both had filled out a form and said, I want to get a quote. So both had converted. Right? Now, one of the groups ended up not buying. So I said to myself, what is the difference between the non-buyers versus the buyers? And this number 30 kept jumping out underneath the buyers. And of course, what does that number 30 represent? Well, that represents the total pages that they had viewed. This is what we found, and this is the discovery that changed my whole philosophy on how we sell as a company and how we train companies to sell. We found that if somebody read 30 or more pages or pieces of content of our website before the initial sales appointment, they would buy 80% of the time. But if they didn't, the closing rates were about 25%. So the question is, what's happening over the course of those 30 pages? And as we all know, if you're watching this, that they were becoming educated and they were moving down the funnel or they were moving out of the funnel. And because we saw this, I was like, my goodness, I've been selling the wrong way for a long time. Because when I was basically for years as a pool guy, today I'm just a silent partner with River Pools, but I sold in the home. That was my main job for the company for about 7-8 years. Somebody would call me up and say, yo, Marcus, I'm looking at your website, whatever. Could you come out to my house, give me a quote for a pool? And I would go. And I would not use content during the sales process. And that was incredibly flawed. And I didn't do what I could do to make sure they were dramatically advanced once the sales team got there. And then once the sales team got there, I didn't use content again to further increase my ability to either, again, move them down or out of the sales funnel. And so we started to integrate content prolifically into this process. We had a lot of cool things happen. And just to give you a sense of what happened, this is a real lead sheet, okay? And so when somebody fills out a form on my website, and this is real, it's a real person, his name's Mr. Grizzard. He did, if you look at the lead source, he did an organic search, and he was using Yahoo search cost of fiberglass pool. And then it goes on to say he read 375 pages of the site. 375 pages of the site. I remember sitting there one night looking at this. This is when I was still a pool guy selling pools. I was like, holy cow, this guy's got way too much time on his hands. Or maybe he's a competitor. But either way, this is odd behavior. But that same night, I got another lead sheet, and this one came from his wife. We're just going to call her Mrs. Grizzard. And she had done an organic search as well. And she had read 149 pages of the website. So between this couple, these two people, before I got to the home, they had read 520-some pages of the website. I thought this was such an anomaly. And what's interesting is I got to that house for the sale, and Mr. Grizzard was standing there with a spreadsheet in his hands. It had the pool he was getting, had every option and accessory he was getting with the pool. And of course, all he needed from me was one thing, which was the price, the contract. And I walked out of that house 45 minutes later, knowing that the average sales appointment used to be 2.5 to 3 hours. I walked out 45 minutes later with a signed contract, $5,000 deposit, and I started to laugh because I realized something. Had I done any selling that day? And of course, the answer is no, I had not. In fact, he was so far along, he was 99.9% home. And my only job that day was, Marcus, don't screw this up. And that is the goal with great content, especially if we're integrating it into the sales process. I realized that day, and I've realized many times since then, the content, assuming it's honest and transparent, integrated into the sales process, it's the greatest sales tool in the world. It's not even close. It's not even close. It's certainly better than any salesperson. I was good at sales, I thought, until I realized the power of content. Turns out that guy that you saw, Mr. Grizzard, he's a very successful surgeon in Virginia. That's what he does for a living, but he's also a consumer, and he wants to be comfortable with his buying decisions. 2013, we sold 95 pools that year, and we tracked the average number of pages those 95 people read before they bought. And can you guess what that number was? Well, it's on the screen. If you guessed 105, you're right. In other words, today, our average customer reads over 100 pages of our website before they buy. And this number continues to grow every year. And so you say, how is that possible? Well, of course, we've got a prolific website that's built on their questions, their needs. But also, we integrate content into the sales process the entire time. And this is just a critical element that we simply cannot forget to do. And that's why we're having this conversation today. And that's why I'm so excited to share this with you. That's why I talk so much about sales in the book, They Ask You Answer. Now, most of us have heard this number, 70% in 0 moment of truth. But there's something significant here. I'm going to repeat the stat really quickly for those that haven't read the study. But basically, this was a study done by Forrester Research Group. And the 0 moment of truth, in simple terms, is when a prospect contacts your company. This is when somebody either contacts you via phone or fills out a form on your website, or you meet them at an event. But it's the moment you now know they might want to spend their money with you. And this is what all the stats are telling us. That today, on average, 70% of the buying decision is made before they talk to your sales team. And this was a B2B study. This wasn't some B2C study. In most B2B, in many B2Cs, we have found this number is actually much higher, right? And so if they are 70% home before they get to your sales team, what does it mean? I think what's significant about this is if I did a poll in your office right now, and I said, what percentage of your what percentage of the sale does your sales team feel like they are responsible for, feel like they handle? I guarantee you most would say, oh yeah, we're responsible for 80-90% of the deal. They don't realize what's happening. It's your job, whether you're in leadership, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, to help the company catch the vision of what is happening with today's buyer, and therefore how we need to adjust in terms of the way we market and sell. It's not the end of sales, but the way sales gets involved in the sales process has to happen sooner. It has to happen on the side of marketing. And if you don't convince your team of that, well, then there's a good chance you could be left behind. You know, when I was struggling with River Pools in 2009 and I thought I was going to go out of business, I started reading all these fancy phrases like inbound marketing and content marketing and social media marketing, blogging. But to me, what I heard was, Marcus, if you just obsess over the questions, worries, issues, fears of your prospects, and then you're willing to address them on your website, you just might be successful. And so our philosophy as a company became 4 simple words. I didn't realize they would become a title of a book, but they really became a philosophy of business, which meant it wasn't just answering their questions. It's like if they want to buy a certain way, we're going to meet them there. If they want to learn a certain way, we're going to meet them there. That's why it's funny when people say, I'm not good at video. It doesn't matter if you're good on video or not. It's your responsibility as a business to meet them where they are at this point. They've asked to be taught via video, via other options. We've got to be willing to give it to them if we expect to remain ahead of the competition. Now, here's the thing about They Ask You Answer. Most companies still, it's crazy. I've been talking about this And great people like Arnie from Vertical Measures has been talking about this for over 6 years now. But to this day, one of the most prolific marketing models that I see, especially with content, is what I call Ostrich Marketing. And an ostrich, which is a myth, but when it has a problem, it buries its head in the sand, right? And it does that because it thinks the problem will go away. But the problem never goes away. So how does this like impact us? Well, it impacts us because if we think questions, doubts, worries, issues, and fears are going to go away without us really addressing them aggressively, we're going to lose. And this is the issue, and this is where the big mistake comes into play. Now, the chart that I'm getting ready to show you is, and I've, for now 6, 7 years, as I've worked with companies on their content strategy and using content to sell, this is the biggest reason why many say, I just didn't get much results. And so we've all heard of the sales funnel before, right? And in this case, I'm gonna call the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel the considerers, the lookers, and the buyers. The considerers are like, maybe I should get a swimming pool, huh? And the lookers are like, I'm starting to really like ask questions about pools and looking around. And then the buyers are like, I know I'm getting a pool, and I'm looking to buy it from somebody. And the reality is, if you look on the left side of the screen, most content marketing, when companies are looking to produce content, text, video, audio, whatever it is, especially when it's a marketing-centric thing, in other words, the sales team isn't involved, it becomes very fluffy content, and this is very, very flawed. And in other words, it's not buyer-based questions. It's like if you worked for a swimming pool company, you produce a piece of content that was like 5 fun games to play in your swimming pool. That's dumb. It doesn't make sense, especially at first. First 6, 12, 18 months of great content shouldn't be in that land of fluff that isn't written or produced for that person that says, I want that thing. And so you start at the bottom of the funnel. You start where the person knows they want the thing, and you work your way out. Unfortunately, most companies work their way down flawed, if they ever get down. You need to start at the bottom and work your way out. If you start at the bottom, you will find that these are the questions that are most prolific in terms of what your sales team is dealing with right now. And so it's going to make their job dramatically easier. So you say, well, what are these types of questions? Talk about this a lot in the book, but this is the stuff that we all care about. I call it the Big Five. Hasn't changed for 6 years. I don't think it's going to change. These are the 5 things, whether it's B2B or B2C, that buyers research before they give someone their money. All right, there's 5 things. Number 1 is cost. Everybody wants to know how much it is, and they want to know about the marketplace. Number 2 is problems. When somebody is going to buy something, they want to know what are the negatives with that. What are the elephants in the room? Who is it not a good fit for? These are the types of things that people want to understand. How could this blow up in my face? Number 3 is we're constantly asking comparison-based questions, right? So if I'm going to buy a lawnmower, I want to compare the best brands for my particular situation. If I want to engage an IT outsourcing company, I want to be able to compare maybe the tech that they use, maybe the companies themselves and their methodologies, but I want to be able to compare things. The 4th one is the reviews. I mean, good grief. We all know that the second most searched phrase for your company is your company plus the phrase reviews. And so that has to do with your company or anything that you sell, any brands that you offer. This is just how it works. We're all prolific with reviews. And then finally, if we're going to buy something, we like knowing what the best is. We want to sense that if we're not buying the best, at least we're getting the best deal, the best value, but best. I'm going to go to a Mexican restaurant tonight. I might search, best Mexican restaurant, Richmond, Virginia. But that's the way that we search for things. You know this. I know this. It's B2B. It's B2C. These are the Big 5. And to give you a couple of examples about this, it's crazy. I've been given, some of you that have seen me speak before, you'll have heard me say this, and then you'll say, but I'm still not doing this as well as we should. I know you're not. I know you're not because I continue to poll the audiences and it's not there. The number 1 is money, right? And so work with me for a second. Let's just talk about money. Let's talk about cost. Have you researched online how much something costs before? Of course you have. And so if you're on a website, let's say, and you can't find anything about cost and price, what is the emotion that you experience? Guaranteed the emotion is you're frustrated, right? So in this moment of frustration, do you say to yourself, that's okay. I know it's on this website somewhere. I'll just keep digging until I find it. That's laughable. Like, we haven't done that for 10 years. The average person will wait less than 10 seconds looking for cost and price information before they jump. So we don't continue to dig on the website. We also don't say in that moment, that's okay, they're not talking about cost and price. They're a value-based business. I will call them on the phone instead. Like, we stopped that one 5 years ago. We did. And so instead of doing either one of those two things, what we do is we, as buyers, we continue to search and we search until somebody gives us the answer. And whoever gives us the answer, generally speaking, they get first contact, if not our business. This is how it works. That's how it works. And that's for all of us. And if you really break it down psychologically, the real reason why we get so upset as buyers is because we know that they know the answer to the question, and they're not giving it to us. And that's when we get frustrated. And so the question, therefore, begs, if we all feel this way, when we can't find cost and price, if you're listening to this right now, are you talking about cost and price on your website? Now, if you're an e-commerce shop, that doesn't really count. You have to. But if you're a service-based business, B2B, are you talking about cost and price? The majority of people, the majority of companies do not talk about cost and price to this day. And of course, the reason why you don't do it, and if you're listening to this right now, you're justifying why you don't do it, even though you expect this as a buyer. You don't do it for three main reasons. And the reason why I know every business says three is because all businesses are the same. The first reason why we say we can't talk about cost and price is because every job is different. We have a very customized solution. We're not selling widgets here, right? So that's the first one. Every job is different. Ultimately, the answer is it depends. Number two reason why we can't talk about cost and price is because we say, well, I'm going to scare them away. What's crazy about that is the thing that actually scares us away is not having it there, not being able to understand how pricing works, the marketplace. And the third reason why we say we can't do it is because the competition. The competition is going to find out. What's funny about that is if I asked you, if I came into your company, talked to your sales team, and I said to your sales team, do you all have a great sense as to what your competitors charge? They would all say, yep, we know. Well, if you know what they charge, it also means what? Yes, they know what you charge. But notwithstanding, we still live in this world of 1995 where we think we can be the ostrich and not talk about cost and price on our website. So with River Pools, when we embraced They Ask You Answer, this was one of the first pieces of content that we addressed. We said, how much does a fiberglass pool cost? And we explained, you know what? It's kind of like buying a car. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of accessories. We explained all those option accessories. And we talked about some of the different packages. What would drive it up? What would drive it down? The marketplace. We said ultimately the answer to your question is it depends. But because we were willing to explain why it depends, this is what happened next. You see, no pool guys had addressed this question on their website 6 years ago. And to this day, less than 5% of all swimming pool builders have addressed this on their website. It's crazy. If you go online today, as you're on listening to this webinar right now, you research any of these questions, you type them in Google, we're going to be the first one you see. Now, because we have advanced analytics, in our case, we use HubSpot. And by the way, I'm just going to give you a 3-year snippet, but these numbers are much greater since that time. But just look at this. Here's a list of the #1 keywords that generated the most visitors to our website over the course of 3 years. So let's look at the top red arrow. That's fiberglass pool prices. 13,000 people went to Google, typed in fiberglass pool prices. Of them, look on the right side, 30 of them fill out a form and said, I want to get a quote from you. So on the right side of the page, what you see is sales appointments. So this is what we know. We had 13,000 people come, landed on that particular article, how much does the fiberglass pool cost? 30 of them became a lead to get a sales appointment. Each one of these red arrows are coming from someone that searched something that caused them to first land on that article. And so you can see that we have over 200 plus sales appointments from people that originally landed on that article, how much does a fiberglass pool cost? Now, here's the main question. If that article is never written, if that piece of content is never produced, does that sales appointment ever occur? And of course, the answer is no. Very most likely not. but we know it did occur. We know which one of these people did buy. We know the value of their pools. We can add all the values back up, and we can attribute those values to one single piece of content that took me 45 minutes to write. 45 minutes where I explained it depends. But I can also tell you that that one single piece of content has generated over $3.5 million in revenue since the day it was written. Do you realize over 90% of our clients, 50% of which are B2B, the number one traffic lead and sales generating content that they produce, if you break it down categorically, has to do with cost and price? I'm not kidding. Let's look at a couple other examples. Problems. People used to ask me all the time, Marcus, be honest, what are the problems with the fiberglass pool? Nobody wanted to address that question because that's an elephant in the room. So we wrote about the problems with fiberglass pools. What happened next? This is really interesting. It's a snapshot from 2 years. The right side is sales appointments. This shows you what keywords generate the most sales appointments for our company over the course of 2 years. Well, other than river pools and spas with 56, which I don't really count because those people were looking for us, the rest of these phrases, they didn't know who they wanted to engage. They just knew they had a question. Look at this. The number one keyword phrase that generated the most sales appointments, other than our company name, was the phrase fiberglass pools problems. That one single article generated over $500,000 in revenue simply because we were willing to talk about who fiberglass is and is not a good fit for. Think about that for a second. Comparison-based. I'm just going to address 3 of the big 5. Again, all this is in the book in detail, and you see multiple examples of how it's worked with other companies too. People used to ask me all the time, so Marcus, tell me why I should choose a fiberglass over a concrete pool. And I had to be honest with them. I had to say, well, the reality is fiberglass isn't always the best solution. But of course, we produce content about this question, even though most swimming pool companies never would talk about the other type of pool on their website, which is silly. It's like assuming people won't find out that concrete pools exist. They are. And so in this case, we talked about it. And because we did, if you go online today and you compare any in-ground pool versus another type of in-ground pool, you're going to see our content. And that piece of content led to hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. Sales we would not have had we been the Ostrich and not talked about these big 5 that move the needle. And because we did these things, that's what took the River Pools website where it was in February of 2009 when we started Day Ask You Answer to where it is today, where we're getting over 600,000 visitors a month during the summer. This year we'll probably hit 750,000 visitors a month during the summer. And that's where it's headed, all because we said we're going to be the best teachers in the world when it comes to fiberglass pools. And if anybody has a question, good, bad, or ugly, we're going to address it. And we're going to start at the bottom of the funnel. We're not going to start at the top. We're not going to produce fluff like so many companies do. Now, let's talk about how this all relates to your video. Because I would be doing a disservice to every single person that's listening to this if we didn't talk about the power of video today. Really quickly, I got to talk about some stats. And everything that they ask you answer, the principle they ask you answer applies as much to video-based content as it does to textually based content. It's important that you realize that and recognize that. Have you asked this question as an organization recently? What impact will video content have on us, our sales teams, because it's not just you, it's your sales team, and your customers going forward? Have you really addressed the question as an organization? I obsess over this. I'm thinking about this question every day for me and for my clients. Every single one of our clients right now, we've got them working to become a media company. It's the way that we see it. Because the stats are crazy. Here's just a couple really quick ones. I didn't make these up. 90% of users say that seeing a video about a product is helpful in the decision-making process. The other 10% apparently don't know the internet exists. Second stat, after watching a video, 64% of users are more likely to buy a product online. According to ComScore, Miss Media reports that the average internet user spends 88% more time on a site with video. Remember what we said earlier? Our average customer reads over 100 pages of our site before they buy with River Pools. With the sales line, it's actually right around, it is way up there with the sales line, which is a B2B service-based business. Vertical Measures would say the same thing. And then the catch-all, the one that's like should be freaking us out in a good, in a bad way. Like if we're not doing this, we should be scared. If we're looking at it, we should be excited. By 2019, global consumer internet video traffic will account for 80% of all consumer internet traffic. We've got to be media companies. Because this is what I know. It's what I know. Our motto as businesses, especially with our video content, has to be very, very simple. If we aren't showing it, it doesn't exist. You say, well, what do you mean by it, Marcus? For example, what company doesn't say it's our people that make us different? What company doesn't say our customer service is what really matters? I think everybody says that. And if everybody is saying it in your industry, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist until you show the thing. Because once you show the thing, that puts you in a different class. Truly, at this point, seeing is believing. And so we've got to have this philosophy. So then the question is, well, if we're going to produce video that sells, where should we start? You're going to love this if you do this. I'm telling you, I've been implementing this in our organizations that we work with. Game changer. All right. Top 5 videos that you should be focusing on for sales in 2017. Video content here. The first one, this is you just don't hear about this online. The first one is the 80%. What is the 80%? Okay. If I went to your sales team right now in your organization and I said, what percentage of questions from prospects are essentially the same every single time? In other words, let's say you have a salesperson on your team and they're going to go meet with 5 prospects today to have 5 appointments, 5 meetings, 5 pitches, whatever you call it in your organization, because everybody has their own way of calling these things. The average company will say, the average salesperson will say, 80% of the questions I get are the same. So the question for you and I is, why are we sending them out there to continually answer the 80% of the questions over and over and over and over again? It doesn't make sense. What would happen if those 80% of questions were answered before we got there? What would happen if all of our prospects had watched a video, maybe even from the salesperson, that gave our company philosophy and doctrine and showed the answer of those things? Yes, it would decrease the amount of time on sales appointments. Yes, we'd have more qualified buyers. Yes, we'd even have more people say, you know what? It's not a good fit. And that's a good thing because now we save time. The idea behind content, making it our greatest sales tool, is that we leverage it to qualify and disqualify as many prospects as possible, as quickly as possible. Second piece of video content that I guarantee you haven't probably produced, you're not a good fit for. Do you realize it's more important on your website that you talk about who you're not a good fit for than who you are? Why? Because everybody says who they're a good fit for. You see, when you do that and you only talk about why we're great, what happens is you don't create a sense of unbias with the viewer, the reader, the listener. And so when you are able to clearly explain, look, fiberglass pools. Let me almost do it like I was doing a video. Let me restate that. Let's say I was doing a video and I was doing a video on fiberglass pools, who they are and who they're not a good fit for. It would sound something like this. You know, if you're going to buy a swimming pool, you're going to own this thing for 20 years maybe. You don't want to make a mistake. Here at River Pools, we realize that. And we care more about you than we care about selling our stuff. We only sell fiberglass pools, but we realize that fiberglass pools aren't the best fit for every type of swimming pool buyer. So what this video is going to show you today, it's going to show you the type of buyer and the features that would not be a good fit for a fiberglass pool. It's also going to show you the type of person and the type of features you'd be looking for where you would say, yeah, I am a good fit for a fiberglass pool. It's going to be honest. It's going to be unbiased. You're going to love it. Most people, most companies have not produced that video. I would challenge you to do so. So that's the second type of video you need to produce. And you probably are thinking to yourself, wow, if the sales team is able to use this, and then we're able to work this into our lead nurturing, like as soon as we get a lead, they get that 80% video before the salesperson has that first pitch. Oh my goodness, this is going to be awesome. And then maybe the second piece of content they get from us is the not a good fit content, like immediately you're going to say this company's like nobody else. Of course you're going to say that because you're not like anybody else. Third type. At this point, every service or product page on your website should have a video that's explaining the thing, showing the thing. You have to look at like every major page of our site has to have a video. Cool? Fourth type of video you got to produce this year is salesperson bio videos. It's like this. Too many salespeople are spending too much time trying to build relationships of trust with prospects when they meet them the first time. And why? Because the prospect has never met them, they've never seen them, they've never heard them, they don't know if they're an expert or not. And that's why every one of your salespeople should have at least one bio video where they send that out to prospects before the initial sales appointment that says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I just want you to know I'm sending you this video. It's really quick. It's about 90 seconds, but it's going to introduce you to me. I want you to see who you're going to be meeting with. I want you to know that I'm not a crazy axe murderer. I'm just a pool guy named Marcus. I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Yeah, so that's how it works. And then finally, number 5, every landing page at this point should have a video. Have you heard the stats? Somewhere between the impact of good video on a landing page can mean a 60 to 80% lift on conversions. How many of your landing pages have a video on them right now? Let's add it. I promise you, if you do this year, it's going to make a major difference. I'm going to close with a case study, and then I can't wait to take your questions. Hopefully you've asked them, like you put them in the chat. I haven't been paying attention, but I'm sure Quinn is like paying attention. So make sure you're thinking of your questions right now because I am obviously excited to talk about them. Black Imaging, wonderful B2B company here. What they do is refurbish medical imaging equipment. They'll take an old MRI machine that's been put out to pasture. They'll refurb it, and they'll sell it to a health organization that can't necessarily afford a new one. Now, this gal's name is Krista Catrola. She's their VP of Marketing. She came to me about 5 years ago. She said, Marcus, I believe in They Ask You Answer. I believe that we need to do all the stuff you're saying, but the problem is when I go to my sales team, when I go to my leadership team, and I say, hey, help me produce this content that answers questions through text and video, et cetera, they said, sorry, Krista, we don't have the time. And besides, we're in sales, you're in marketing, so you go do your thing. She was so frustrated. She almost left the company. In fact, she wrote the foreword to the book, and this is why I love sharing her story. It's a powerful foreword, very powerful. So she was frustrated, and her last-ditch effort before she left her company was she wanted to have me out to convince, and she said specifically, Marcus, I want you to convince leadership and sales that they want to be a part of marketing. Well, I went out there and we taught them a workshop. We had 65 people in that room. We gave them the what, the how, and the why. We gave them the vision of all this. This is why workshops are so critical. You know, Vertical Measures, they teach tons of these workshops too. So I love Arnie. Like, he gets the vision. If you don't have a foundation for the entire staff that they can see this vision, the what, the how, and the why, as Simon Sinek would say, well, then it's a good chance it's going to fail. You got to get your sales team on board. And so we got them on board. Here's what's happened with their traffic since that time. We taught this workshop in late 2011, and then they started to embrace They Ask You Answer. They got their team involved. Everybody became a subject matter expert. And you see what happened to their organic search. That's the green is the organic search. They just exploded. Now they're getting over 80,000 visitors a month to a very niche B2B website. Here's a direct quote from Krista. Because of insourcing, in other words, leveraging our existing team, our employees as subject matter experts, and content marketing, of course, following this philosophy of They Ask You Answer, we can account for at least 20 million in sales we otherwise never would have gotten. Of course, they're tracking it. They're using it, analytics. That's what it's all about. Here's what's cool. Here's the most viewed pages of her website. Real analytics, y'all. Look at this. The most viewed page of her website, MRI machine cost and price guide. Third most, CT scanner price guide. Fifth most, imaging equipment sales prices. Sixth most, how much does a CT scanner cost? I mean, here's a versus one for you. This is the top 10 pages. Top 10 pages. All Big Five. We see it again and again and again and again. Final point. This is a cool email I got from her. I just love this. Says, guys, y'all may be sick of hearing these stories, but I still get a kick out of it. I got this email from her, by the way, like 6 months ago. She sent this to me from a sales team member. His name was, the sales team was Chris. Chris said, I just had a conference call with the pain management center in Arkansas. Come to find out, before we even spoke, the purchaser had printed off several of my blogs to bring to her board meeting and enabled her to answer questions on, and look at the Big Five come out, comparison models, budgets, price, what equipment they needed best. She had read and seen so much of our content, she said she couldn't wait to talk to me. She told me who my competitors were and how much they were quoting. Even when I told her we would likely charge more, she said, but I trust you guys. I'd rather work with you. I realized they don't all line up like this, but when our funnel is working at its best, it is so, so, so sweet. I'm sure I could still find a way to script the deal, but the point is the effort to produce the content is worth it. Thank you to the stellar efforts of the marketing team for really setting us apart. I would ask you, when was the last time your sales team sent an email like that to marketing? If you haven't, you don't have a sales and marketing alignment and culture with your content. And I think now we are ready for your questions. And so if anybody has questions, we'd love to take them now. And by the way, the book They Ask You Answer, it's out there on Amazon, Barnes & Noble right now. And of course, if anybody has a question from what you've heard today, you can email me directly. That's on the screen, marcus@thesaleslion.com. Quinn, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have loads, and I believe Arnie is here too. He wanted to say
Hey!
Hey, Marcus.
That's my guy right there.
How you doing today?
You know I'm doing good.
I know it. I just watched it. You're doing great.
So I'll start off with one here from Samantha. She asked, do you put content for buyers, considerers, and lookers on different pages?
You know, here's the one issue with that. I think sometimes when we get really, really, like, you know, you listen to a company like HubSpot, and they're always talking about tofu, mofu, bofu, it's all this stuff. The issue is, what is bottom of the funnel content to me could arguably top of the funnel content to other people, and we just have to be careful. I do think, though, that you do try to put the major buyer-based question in their own place. And that should be a hub of easy information. Like generally when we set up a learning center on a website, we try to make those core bottom of the funnel questions right there listed out for the prospect, for the viewer. That way they can immediately click on the link that takes them to the article or the video or both that are addressing it in detail. Very good question, though. Very good. I think you should feel it out. I think you should feel it out. But I would put those bottom of the funnels together, at least the way that we've described them, the majors.
And you mentioned quite a bit throughout the presentation about culture and buy-in. And so we have a question regarding that from Andrew. He asks, I work for a community college and we do not have a blog or a content marketing strategy, but I'm working on it. Where should I start to help shift the culture?
This is the number one problem. Do you know, Andrew, the biggest problem in this space isn't bad content or bad content strategy. Those would be, I would consider those probably number two. The number one problem is getting buy-in, because there's people like you that have the vision, like Krista had the vision, and you're not getting the resources nor the help because they don't get it. And so what is the best solution? I'm going to tell you one that sounds self-serving, but this is the reality of the game here. Unless you either A, find a way to bring your team to these events, or B, you have somebody come in to your company and give everyone the vision, in this case your organization, your community college, and help them see the vision and the power of content could have on the community college, you're probably not going to get the buy-in you need. And it's sad. But it goes back to this. You can be a prophet to the world, but nobody hears you in your own town. And so you could be the best marketer in the world, Andrew. But because you're in the business and you work there, unfortunately, they don't listen to you as much. When I go give a workshop, and Arnie has heard this 1,000 times, we go give workshops, and then the CMO of the company says, I don't understand. I've been saying this for 3 years. Now all of a sudden you come in here, and everybody's like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It wasn't anything that we said. It's just the fact that somebody outside the organization said it.
Very, very true. I've gotten a couple questions about video, and I've got a couple actually about clarifying what the 80% meant under the types of videos. I think a couple of people just wanted clarification on that.
So what you do is you meet with your sales team today, and you say, when you have a first sales call or appointment or pitch with somebody, list the questions that you get almost every single time. Okay? Every single time. Now, those questions constitute 80% of that first sales call. The other 20% are very specific to the prospect's needs. And so the idea is you eliminate the 80% so that all that is left is the very specific questions once you get there. Goes back to the concept of, see, those 80% are the teach questions. The 20% are the sell questions. And so you get rid of the teaching questions on your sales calls because they already know the answers. They know your philosophy and doctrine. Does that answer your question? Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so, yeah. A question again on video. How polished do marketing videos need to be, in your opinion?
Oh, wow. The one thing that we've done this year, maybe more than anything else, is go into companies and train sales teams how to techniques for how to be great communicators on video. So this is a process. And one of the biggest tragedies in the content marketing space right now is the people that are saying, unless it's great, don't put it out there. It's almost like telling a child that's 1.5 years old, unless you can walk well, I just don't want to see you trying, because if you're going to keep falling down, don't even do it. You're wobbling. Stop the whole wobble thing. Just crawl until you can walk. No, it doesn't work that way. It didn't work that way for me as a pool guy. And if somebody looks at my videos today, like I'm producing a ton of videos, and a lot of people are saying to me, man, Marcus, you're producing pretty cool videos. That didn't happen like just overnight. I bombed out on a bunch of these at first. There's a phrase in acting, when actors get a script and they're all going through it the first time, they like to say the phrase, embrace the messy. And not enough companies, when it comes to content, are embracing the messy. I'm asking you to embrace the messy with your video. And so here's how I'd rate it out. When we talk with a client on this, we say on a quality scale, let's make it a video a 7 out of 10 or higher. So let's go 7 out of 10 or higher. Audio, though, needs to be a 9 or higher out of 10. But the idea is that we're always getting better and better and better. You got to go through the messy first, though. There's no way around it.
I think that's your new hashtag, Marcus. Embrace the messy. I like
Word.
Hey, Marcus, and it isn't just video. It's
kind
of content, right?
Anything that we create in life.
Right.
Anything we create in life.
You went a little further than I thought, but
yes,
with that one, but yeah.
Yes. My daughter is an artist. She had to embrace a lot of ugly paintings before she got good, and Arnie has seen some of her stuff. She's good.
Well, Marcus, do you have any recommendations or best strategies for amplification and promotion? I know that wasn't really the main focus here, it's more about the content types and being found, but do you have any ideas around that you can share?
You know, the number one amplification strategy that nobody talks about is putting it in the hands of your sales team. Like, nobody talks about that. That makes me vomit. They are your greatest set of missionaries. They are the ones that are on the field that can generate revenue for your company right now. It's like I hear people all the time say, you know, I don't know if this content, producing all this content is worth it, because there's a lot of people in my industry that have already done this. So what happens? Your sales team, do they share their content now in the sales process? I mean, hopefully not. Look, let's say that Google never brought you another visitor again. Like SEO didn't exist. This philosophy of being the best teacher in the world, listening, obsessing over the way they want to buy, what they ask, and then addressing it, is as relevant in 50 years as it is today. Because your sales team must have this in their hands. And plus, if they're coming to your website through a social visit, through a direct visit, through a referral, are they being fed when they get there? Do they feel like, wow, this company gets me? We act like, you know, when I hear people say content marketing doesn't work because the industries are too saturated with content and therefore it's too hard to rank, I'm like, you have no concept of what content marketing is. Because if you talk to a CEO and you say, is great teaching and problem solving and gaining customer trust critical to our business for the next 50 years, they're going to be like, of course it is. We need to be seen as a great teacher 50 years from today. If you go to them and say, is content marketing going to be relevant in 50 years? They might say, no, man, I think that stuff's a trend. They don't get it. They don't understand it. So that's the number one amplification. That was a long answer. Second one, though, the second one is at this point, if we're doing video is the stuff that is actually getting shared now. People kind of are not sharing textual stuff nearly as much. They still are, but not nearly as much. And so the visual video-based content is the stuff that's getting shared, which is why we've got to go direct platform at this point. Upload direct to Facebook, upload direct to the Twitters. That's how we've got to do it today with our social amplification. And there's a bunch of others. We could go into them, but hopefully you got the point. If you're talking about the stuff that matters, it gets amplified a lot more than that fluff that's out there.
So I've got a two-part question. It's specific to a vertical, specific to a niche vertical, but I think it can be generalized. So it's from Amy. She asked, what can you advise for a business that offers commodity products such as a bank or credit union? And I think the second part of the question is the general, how do you differentiate from the pack?
All right. I might offend somebody here.
Okay, go for it.
You know, I've worked with CUSOs. I've worked with credit unions. If Walt Disney was in that industry, he would never call what they sell a commodity. In fact, I've been in that world, and I don't think what they sell at all is a commodity. The moment we believe we sell a commodity is the moment we start selling a commodity. But there's people in every space that don't. And so if your credit union is the best teacher in the world, if you like literally can't imagine using somebody else because they guide you, they teach you, they make sure that you use your investments and your money and your purchases wisely, they make sure that you're not wasting money. I mean, like, that is the ultimate relationship with a financial institution. I don't believe that it's a commodity at all. When you create great information, even about a commodity, you immediately become that, as Godin would say, that purple cow in that field of everybody looks the same. So this is the thing that can make you immediately different. You don't have to have something fundamentally different about the way you like your service or product. If you are a great teacher and better than anybody else, more honest and transparent than anybody else, you will be seen as very, very different. You will not be just morphed into a commodity. When you do what we're talking about today, this is almost the antithesis of becoming it takes you down a completely different trail. What was the second half of the question, Quinn?
It was, how do you differentiate from the pack?
Yeah, I think I kind of answered that. But doing everything we've talked about today, right? Like, think about it. Just look at the credit union industry. How many of them are prolific with video right now? Less than 5%. I know it for a fact. I really know that industry very well. I've spoken at some major credit union conferences. I mean, I know that world. And so I know lots of world at this point because I've had to study a bunch. Because when I go and speak in front of these audiences, I don't want to sound dumb. And plus, I've had a lot of clients, but I definitely know that world. Definitely know that world. This stuff will set you apart.
I love it. Thank you, Marcus. I highly recommend, and I'm going to do it myself, is to go over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Your book just came out 2 days ago, right?
It just came out. It's
wow.
fresher than a plant that just popped out of the ground, people.
This is the launch party.
It's the launch party.
That's
right here. Right here.
Yes. Well, I know how much work it is to put together a book and get it out into the world. So I'm sure you feel like this is another child. And we're excited to read it and buy it and share it with the world. So we highly recommend anyone on here getting that as well. So thank you, Marcus. I think that's all the time we have. We will send out the recording and the slides to everyone. So just keep an eye out for that tomorrow morning. And Marcus, we always appreciate you being with us. So thank you.
Thanks,
all. Marcus.
Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Marcus. Happy fishing.
Bye.